Welcome to the Vibrantly Colored Lives of Women in India with artist Mihira Karra. I'm Lisa Martin with Silver Spring Town Center. Mihira is a portrait and figurative artist. In her words, she says, "I tell a story through my portraits and figurative work in a unique medium, fabric. I sketch lightly on canvas with a pencil and then literally paint with fabric by cutting and gluing tiny pieces of fabric, a very fine collage technique. My journey as an artist started as a child in India when I watched a very talented, self-taught older cousin sketching with coal and rice starch and ash. He made beautiful portraits with these raw implements from the kitchen and encouraged me to pick up a pencil and just copy anything I liked. My love for the grace and beauty of horses and dancers became obvious soon as I kept drawing these throughout my childhood and later. My next big discovery in my journey to understand myself and continue teaching myself art came around the age of 12 when I discovered portraiture. I used my grandmother and a great aunt as live models, as they were the only ones with the patience to sit for my experiments and did my first sketches. These were widely admired and started me on the journey to focusing on portraiture and the human face and figure. Using live models as well as reference photos, I continued artwork as a hobby with pencils and later with oil pastels throughout school and college in India. I focused on women mostly. I have strong trailblazing women in my family. Yes, she does. I know her wonderful mom, and that's for sure. Shamala is one of my favorite people. She's really awesome. She has many trailblazing women in my family, she says, who have overcome many adversities and succeeded in life, and I wanted to capture them on paper. My grandmother is a classic example. She became the first woman engineer in South Asia after she was widowed at the age of 18. My love for horses and dancers, however, did not diminish. The grace, strength, and beauty of horses and dancers from all over the world always enthused me and continues to do so. My career in international development and family life took precedence starting in the 1980s, and my art went into a hiatus for nearly 2 decades. After a life-altering event in 2013, I attended a fabric collage workshop with a friend, and that got me back into art in a much bigger and stronger manner. Understanding the versatility and uniqueness of fabric as a medium got me started on doing figurative work and with this medium. Interestingly, I went back to my love for portraits. My scientific career in international development has also influenced my artwork. I love doing figurative work of mothers and children from around the world. I also discovered storytelling through my portraits by developing a collage technique wherein I put the subject's interest and history in their faces. My love for horses and dancers has also come back, and I've done several popular works in this unique medium. At the request of friends, I started doing landscapes with fabric and realized that I love portraying nature's beauty too. I am also re-exploring the world of pencil and colored pencil, delving into charcoal and paint, both very new media for me. I have started expanding my work to include mixed media collage with fabric, paint, paper, and other media to create rich textures and abstraction for my figurative themes. In addition to what I focus on in art and how I do it, I was asked the important question, why I do it. Why do I feel compelled to doodle, sketch, spend hours collaging? Apart from capturing beauty, strength, and grace, whether it is the human, animal, or nature, my love for portraiture stems from trying to capture a moment, an expression, a feeling, a relationship. Discovering collaging techniques has enabled me to go further and tell a story through my portraits. This is the reason that I enjoy doing commissioned portraits. The reactions of my subjects to seeing all the important events and people in their lives captured through their faces is priceless. Welcome, Mihira.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. That was great. Thanks so much.
Great.
So today, I think Lisa asked me to focus on the very roots of my existence, which is I'm from India. And interestingly, in India, I have spent time in very different parts. And as you may be aware that every state in India is very unique in language, culture, cuisine, everything. And because my father was in the railways, we moved around a lot. So I actually, though my parents are from South India, I was born and raised in Eastern and Northern India. So you see those influences throughout this slide presentation. For example, this is one of my big pieces. It's also fabric on canvas. And this is women in the desert in Rajasthan in Western India. So this is a large one. It's 24 inches by 36. So this is one, and just waiting, taking a brief respite before starting off again on their journey home after collecting water. They walk for miles to collect water and go back home. And those little things on the top you see on their head is actually made of fabric too, on which they keep their pots so that it stays steady. And these women are used to carrying multiple layers of pots on their heads. It's very interesting to watch them do that. So if we can move on to the next one. This is from South India. This girl, this is a very typical way of dressing for a girl in South India, where my parents are from and where my origins are. So I remember dressing like this when I was a kid. Oh, my battery is running low, so let me plug it in. Sorry. I remember dressing like this, and it's flowers in their hair, and it's very, very typical of Southern India to have this kind of dress. Let me just get my charger. I think
It's
I am
my it's my screen that you see.
what?
It's my computer that needs to be plugged in.
Is
Because
it
you're looking
mine?
at my screen. You're looking at my screen.
Yours, not mine. Sorry.
Yeah, so go ahead, continue. You don't really need to worry about.
Yeah, I don't need to worry about the charge. Okay, moving on to the next one then. This is also fabric on canvas. Yeah, this is from East India, Bengal, where I was born and raised. So this is typical, this red and white sari that Bengali woman wears on many auspicious occasions. And blowing the conch is a way to ward off evil spirits. And that's done at any auspicious occasion, whether it's in the morning prayer, before a big event, during marriages. So it's any time to ward off evil spirits. And this is such a typical pose. And I just loved it. And this actually, when I first did it 2 years ago, I also used this for my business cards, artist business cards. And later on, I'll show you, I've done different versions of this. This one is fabric on canvas again. Moving on. This is just, again, as I said, I love portraits. This is my aunt when she was a young woman. And this was when I was experimenting with doing black and white portraits with a hint of red, because I love that color combination. I love grayscale with a touch of red. So this was one of my earlier portraits that I did with bigger pieces of fabric, and just to get the feel of the face and the expression. Moving on. This is actually, this is a tribute to a painter who I love in India. He actually was a young man who passed away due to COVID last year, very unfortunately. He's an oil painter, very well-known oil painter from the South. He had done, this is kind of my fabric take on one of his paintings. So his original painting is oil. I did it with fabric and made some adjustments myself to her face, because I just wanted to do something different. But essentially, it's a tribute to him. And actually, one of my cousins has this. He bought it from me. So moving on. This is again from the north. I love women and pots. Don't ask me why. You'll see a whole series of them coming. And this is a small piece I did. It was just 4 inches by 6 inches. And one of my good friends bought it at one of my shows. This is also fabric on canvas. So far, it's all been fabric on canvas. So is this. This is one of the, India has 9 classical forms of dancing. And this is one of the classical forms from the north called Kathak. And it's like, actually, it was 2 pieces of it, and I had donated these pieces to charity fundraising. So this is one of them, and the next one is another. So just 2 different poses of Kathak, and this is a very typical dress. Those, they have the kind of skirts that are come up to their knees, and then underneath they have kind of tights, and then of course the dancing bells. And so it's a very this is, the bells are worn by all forms of dancers, but the style of dancing is very different in each of the classical forms. Moving on. This is one of my favorite themes, of course, mother and child. I've done mothers and children from different parts of the world. And this was just to get, again, my black and white favorite. And this I gave as a gift to a close friend. So, moving on. This is also fabric on canvas, little pieces of fabric on canvas.
We're getting some questions in the chat. Would you like to
take
them as we go?
Oh yeah, let me look at the questions.
Yeah, so there's.
What do you use for adhesive? Okay, yeah, I use golden polymer medium, the acrylic polymer medium, and I use glossy one for actually sticking it, because the glossy one keeps the colors of the fabrics better. But once I'm done, I put 1 layer of the matte finish so that it evens out the whole thing. And you can also take a better picture when you use the matte one, just as a final coating. Okay, so this is also fabric on canvas. And again, this is based on the oil painting done by Mr. Ilayaraja, that artist whom I love. I actually have one of his pieces. I'm so glad I commissioned it about 3 years ago and got that piece. And it was so heartbreaking to hear of his going due to COVID in India. Anyway, so this is again one of his that I based it on. Okay, moving on. This is again from Bengal, as I said, and the biggest festival in Bengal is called Durga Puja. It happens in the fall, and it is a festival celebrating the goddess Durga, the all-powerful and protectress. She essentially in mythology has the powers of all the gods combined to get rid of evil. And Bengal, they celebrate it in a big way, and so does most of southern India, because that used to be the more matriarchal parts of ancient India. So the goddesses come from the south and the east, and the gods came in later on with the patriarchal conquerors coming into India. So this dance is called Dhulichi. It's done with the incense pots, and they dance in front of the goddess. And the goddess images are done with various different, they're made of terracotta, paper mesh, all kinds of things. And you see them all over, and they are more and more elaborate. And they are put there for 10 days during this puja, and then they are kind of allowed to submerge into the Ganges. They're put into the Ganges so that she goes back to her heavenly abode. That's the idea. So this dance called Dhulichi. And so just at the back, I drew with fabric. I did just the outlines of the eyes and the nose ring of the goddess, as she's typically denoted in drawing, just from that state. That's all. So this is one of the dances, Dhulichi. Moving on. This is again a portrait of my aunt 50 years ago, but this is a very big piece. It's again 20 by 30 inches and very detailed fabric work. I really wanted to it's such a lovely black and white photo of hers. I wanted to capture her, and she was just posing for some photographer who wanted to see a woman in a sari, because she was in Germany as a student. And she had her sari just tied normally, not in any fancy way. And so it really is so typical of how women wore their saris, and she had this long, beautiful hair. So I just wanted to capture that and get it. And in one of the shows, actually, I took a photo of her today when she's 80 this year, standing next to this portrait. And it was lovely to see that. Moving on to the next, we've gone back to the beginning. There were all my mixed medias coming up.
This was the intro piece, but we have it again. So
sorry, yeah.
You already talked about it?
Yeah, I already talked about it.
Great.
Moving on. This is again fabric. This is about, again, as I mentioned, we have 9 classical dances in India. This is a dancer who's dressed typically for a South Indian classical dance called Bharatanatyam. And girls, this was done for my friend's niece, who, when they first, after years of training, when they do their first major public performance, it's a very big deal. And the teacher is revered by the family and everyone and given gifts. And so this was during what they call this Arangetram, the first public professional performance by this young dancer. So I had done this so that her aunt could give it to her as a gift during the ceremony. And this is how they typically dress, with different colored flowers and full regalia. Moving on. Okay, this is again Bengal. As you can see, I'm very fond of Bengal. I was born there. And there's red and white sari. And this is just a typical daily prayer with the incense sticks. And this is also fabric on canvas. Moving on then. This is a South Indian woman. This is a vintage photo, actually. I took it from a vintage photograph. It reminded me so much of my great-grandmother's home, and seated like this. I mean, it used to be typical to be seated in these marble floors. I actually did them myself, but the photograph didn't have it, because this was so typical of my great-grandmother's home, with with the stone banister in the back and the big pillars. They were all built of stone and concrete in those days, and they used to get the tiles from all over. It was a beautiful old house. So this reminded me of her, so I had to do it in fabric. And many of my pieces are sitting in the Zenith Gallery. Marjorie Goldberg and the Zenith Gallery represent me. So you'll find these in the Zenith Gallery in Washington, D.C. This one is with her at the moment. Moving on. This was one of my first mixed media pieces, trying to go more abstract. And I actually this was, again, it is interesting. This was during last year's Durga Puja, the big festival I mentioned. So it was going on in India, but this was here. I mean, we don't celebrate it like in India, but somehow I wanted to depict the goddess. So while doing abstraction, I ended up somehow having a theme of blowing the conch and looking at, kind of almost like the goddess's guiding hand. It was all about the theme of the pujas. And this actually I gave to another Indian friend, and she immediately recognized it for what it was, because I'd given it to her during that season. So it is all about the Durga Puja.
When did you do this one, Mihira?
Excuse me?
When did you do this one?
This one was last year during the puja.
Okay, because
in October, November. Yeah,
okay.
September.
Yeah, I noticed the style is changing.
Yeah. Great. This was more after taking this a course on abstraction, because I wanted to get into mixed media and abstraction, and it really, that course by Judy Woods from New Zealand, it's fantastic online course that got me really far less afraid of these other media and to be far more experimental. So you'll see the results of those experiments. I'm just loving the mixed media, using fabric and other things, and kind of creating pieces that I don't necessarily start with something in mind, but create it as it goes. I love the freedom it's giving me. And so if we move on, you'll see what I mean.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
I have abstraction. Yeah, this is
Myself.
paper, pencil, paint, and layers and layers. When you actually look at it, you'll be able to see the full texture of it.
Yeah, yeah, it's
So,
really cool. Yeah. And Karen says she loves the Mandy on the hands. So,
thank you. Yeah, that was, see, that's why it's a mix of a lot of things here. And this is also part of it is fabric. That bendy hand, I actually found fabric with it. And the rest of it is paint and pencil. So,
mhm. And if anybody has questions, feel free to jump in and ask.
there was there something else? Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and this is again one of my mixed media pieces. This is a big piece. This is 18 by 24, 20 by 24 actually. And so here again, it's layers of paint and paper. So what I did was actually fill the canvas first with different pieces of paper, rough paper. Then I put several layer colors and painted kind of like a mixed big mess of colors. And then I used other colors to kind of cut off shapes from this big mix. So what you see, the three women, their dresses, that's what the entire canvas looked like originally. And then I cut off into it so that I left that texture. So the three women, their texture is very different from the rest of it, which is kind of almost like the rest of it is got a lot of texture, but it's not as, doesn't stand out as much on the canvas as these three figures do when you see the original. So this is paper, paint, coffee grounds. All the black shadows are all coffee grounds. So this is again mixed media, the same technique where I filled the canvas first and then used more neutral paint to cut off the shape that I wanted. And then using kind of light alcohol markers at the back for the shadows. So it's paper, paint, pencil, alcohol markers. And again, women with a pop. It was just to create that figure. But the whole canvas was first, I used the colors I wanted and then cut into it. So moving on. This is also similar, but this has got fabric and paper and paints, lots of layers. And this is again a team of two women working away. And this is just like a brief respite for them, one woman visiting with the other. Even during when they're chatting, they are continuing to work, and there are pots everywhere as usual. I was on a pot. I had a pot mania for about 2 months. It looks like women and pots. And this is a big piece too. It's 20 by 24. This was again one of the small pieces sitting in front of the kitchen. But again, this is all about texture. This was just an 8, and it's actually 11 by 14 piece. It's a smaller piece, but again, very textured, highly textured, and with just the impression. So it is far less detailed than my fabric medium stuff. Moving on. This is one of the ones I also mixed media. The only fabric is actually the woman's sari. Everything else is paper, paint, pencils, all kinds of things. So this, the title was caged. I mean, whether it's a bird that's caged or she herself is caged, it felt like the whole thing was. That's why I put bars even on the window. And this one actually a high school friend bought from me. She just loved it, and so she bought this. Moving on. This is one of the goddess Durga, as I mentioned, the all-powerful. So this is one representation of her. So this is very mixed media with kind of paper, pencil, paint, no fabric in this. And the paints, both the glossy and the metallics. And this is kind of in prayer to the goddess. And the goddess is usually represented seated on either a lion or a tiger. So I put them there. And then she is the 10-handed goddess that carries all these different instruments of war as well as of peace and blessing, because she's the protectress. And so this was kind of like, it's part of a triptych. And then there are images of bells, temple bells, and incense, And what is the writing you see, it's actually a shloka, a small prayer, a part of a prayer to the goddess. That's a very typical prayer for this particular goddess in Sanskrit. So I have that there. I've done this as part of a triptych. I think I've put only 2 of the images here, but all 3 of the primal goddesses in Hindu mythology. This is Durga, then there's, if you see the next one, it's the goddess Saraswati, the goddess of learning and wisdom. And the one I think I forgot to put in here was the goddess of wealth, Lakshmi. So have it as a triptych. These are 12 by 12 inch, smaller pieces, but all within the same idea of the goddess's prayer with the main instruments or weapons she's seen with. In this case, she's seen with a veena or a sitar because she's about knowledge, and so that's why you see images of books, and she rides a swan. That's essentially what the mythology says. So that's what this is about. Moving on. This, if you notice, I had done this in fabric. The South Indian woman seated and looking over her shoulder. So I love that image so much. I did one with mixed media. This is paints and paper and pastels, a lot of. So, but this has got a slightly very different vibe to it. I made it like the evening time and like she's bathing. And in my favorite black and white and grays and touches of red. Okay, moving on. This is my grandmother. So this was a tribute to her when 2019 was her 100th birth anniversary. She died very young. She was only 60 when she died. She had just retired. So this was when she graduated in 1943. So in her robe, and that because she had worked for a British and an American firm, and she was actually well known, and in fact getting better known now because books have been written about her. My mother saved all the newspaper articles about her, and I kind of reverse printed them on fabric and cut them up and put them on her robe. But I kept the rest of it plain, but those articles tell a lot about her work. So this was the year she graduated. My mother was 5 years old at that time. So I think we are done with this is fabric on canvas. So I ended with one of my bigger fabrics. Oh, one more. Yeah. And my other favorite thing, the woman with the conch, but this time as almost like a gel collage where I printed the image, then removed the paper from the back by putting a heavy gel layer on it. It's a very interesting technique, Judy Woodstock, so that you end up with almost like a sheer gel image. And I put that on and then painted. They used a lot of different pieces of paper underneath and all that, and painted. And that's the image of Durga as it's typically drawn in Bengal. And this is blowing the conch in honor of the goddess. And this is a big piece. This is 20 by 24 mixed media.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to show all this.
We have time for some questions, comments. If anyone would like to ask Mihira a question or comment. Oh, I see Marjorie is here.
Hi, Marjorie.
Zenith Gallery.
Yep. Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Nice seeing you. You do a nice job at these.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just managing to talk without coughing. So that was good.
Yeah. How do you feel?
Getting there. Getting there.
Yeah, a lot of people have been getting sick, that's for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of Mihira's work is in Zenith Gallery.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I've got a lot of her work here.
What's the current exhibition, or is it the permanent exhibition that she's in?
The current exhibition is one guy. No, but I mean, my whole home is a gallery, so I've got art everywhere. inside, outside, everywhere.
Right.
So it's
Yeah, so she has my pieces. Some of the she keeps rotating them on her walls, and then when there are special shows, she brings out several of them that belong to that theme.
Yeah.
So at any time when you go to the Zenith Gallery, you'll be able to see some of my pieces, and she has more inside. And if you ask her, she can show you any number of them.
yes.
Great.
Yeah, they're terrific. Very talented.
Great. Well,
Thank
good
you,
to
Margie.
see you. And does anyone else have any questions or comments for Mihira? I think I saw someone raising, or someone I thought unmuted themselves, but okay, great. So Mihira, I know, I remember you telling me something about exhibiting in India. You haven't really done that, right? Or have you had a
No,
minor? And
I haven't found a way to do that yet, but I recently became friends with an artist based here out of Pittsburgh, Bakula Nayak, another wonderful artist, but she has actually broken into the Indian market through other contacts and friends. And they do an exhibition once in 2 years in Bangalore. And she's hoping to hold one again next year. If she does, she told me she would like me to be part of that, which would be wonderful. But with COVID and the way, I mean, we are vaccinated, boosted, everything. My parents double boosted, and we still fell ill. So I'm really hesitant to go anywhere. And
oh, right, right.
and with the Indian market is very different. I only know the market as a buyer because I have Indian art all over my house. But I really don't know how to approach galleries and all that. That's why I'm hoping Bakula will be able to help me a little bit.
You say the Indian market is very different. I remember you saying that before.
Yeah,
Very
it's a
different from
huge
here.
market, but it's also very, you have to know people and really know how to get in there. You can't just send things to galleries and hope they'll look at it. It's not as, shall I say, democratic as we have here.
And is the kind of taste for the art different too? Do they?
Yeah. See, my stuff maybe but yeah, fabric is such a different. They're into far more traditional
right.
media, but not necessarily the themes. You'll see the themes would go fine, especially my Indian themes, but it's the medium fabric just isn't there. I mean, it's not known at all there. But fabric is such a big part of their lives, but not as a medium of art for painting.
So I see Karen Brown has a question. Did you want to ask Karen, or should I read it from the chat?
Oh, what did you when you first started? Oh, when I first
Karen's
started.
coming on. She's coming on.
Okay.
She's going to ask you.
Lovely work.
Thank you.
It's making me remember many trips to India, and I tear up when I see your work in a good way.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I was just curious, because when did you start making art, and what were you working in?
Now, when I was a kid, it was all pencil and oil pastels. That's all I knew how to do. I mean, as I said, I watched my cousin and started sketching. So it was just regular charcoal, regular pencil, and oil pastels all the way till I was in college. But then I didn't do anything for 20 years. And then I had a life-altering event. I was fell very ill in 2012. In 2013, my friend and I just went to this fun collage workshop for fabric. That got me started again. So since 2013, I was doing fabric mostly. And then over the last couple of years, I started going back to some of my charcoal, pencil, and then started painting only after doing this abstract class and enjoying the feel of paint. I was always very worried about taking a brush and doing something with it because it seemed like I would have less control. But then this whole mixed media thing, Judy Woods opened it up for me. And I'm so thankful to her for getting me over the fear of painting.
Yes, there is some fear in the paint can. Also, do you work with, do you purchase fabrics or do you use
Yeah.
recycled materials?
I recycled also, but it's mostly fabrics that I bought in Joanne Fabrics or batiks. I love batiks. So batiks that I bought online. So I have a whole collection of them, little pieces. But when I do portraits, actually, if you go onto my website, or if you ever go to the Zenith Gallery, they have my portraits of, say, Obama or Biden and Harris, all of them. And there, when I put their interests and history in their faces, I actually get stuff that's relevant to their histories printed on fabric. There is a site called spoonflower.org. They print different things.
Yes,
for
I
you.
know it.
Yeah, I love Spoonflower is great. So I get them printed and then I cut it up and use it as part of my portrait.
And have you ever used khadi in your work?
No, I haven't, but khadi would work fine because it's 100% cotton. As long as it's 100% cotton. But khadi with the gel, how it will change color, I won't know. See, everything changes slightly. So as you experiment, you find, and I use both the front and back side of the fabric because the more patterned it is, the nicer the images actually come. So if you're in the DC area, if you live anywhere here, I live right outside DC in Virginia. If you're around, I'm happy to allow people to come and see my work at home. Or if you really would like to see these up close, go to the Zenith Gallery. It's in Chevy Chase. And you can see the
Shepherd
actual
Park.
figure.
It's in Shepherd Park, not in Chevy Chase.
Oh, sorry. Shepherd Park. I get the area wrong always. So it's right on Irish Street in Zenith. So that you can see all the details there.
Thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
And I was wondering, do you usually look at your figures, your subjects while you're doing your art, or do you look at a photograph, or is it all from memory?
I've been doing mostly photos now because it's hard and especially the famous people, I have to look at photos. When I started off, I used to just look at people and draw them. That's how I did it. But it's more recently, it's all been photos.
Well, and I know you're a scientist in addition to being an artist, and you've mentioned in your bio, you say that your daily work inspires your creative work. Can you talk a little more about that? How does your work in maternal health?
Yes, I work in international health, in international family planning and HIV prevention, so women's reproductive health. And this is a very bad time for us. But what's going on with Roe versus Wade here and all this anti-women's choice. And that's hits at the heart of our work. And so there have been a lot of political portraits I've done of people who very much support women's choice and empowerment. And so, I mean, I've done portraits of activists, both here, mostly the US-based activists, because that influences all the work we do overseas. So we support projects. I'm in the research division. I actually manage the research portfolio for USAID, the Agency for International Development, just the population side. And every contraceptive you see in the market today, we have had a hand in it in some form or the other, either in early clinical stages or later on in introductions into countries. So all that is so dependent on the political will of not only the US government, also the governments we work with and the NGOs. We do a lot of work through NGOs. So all that influences how I see the world. And so, in fact, in my portraits of some of my well-known colleagues in our field, I've actually used images of contraceptives and of HIV prevention in their portraits a lot. So that's very much it. And women, images of women and children is always very much at the heart of what we do.
Oh, great. Let's see. We have time for a couple more questions if anyone wanted to chime in. So what's some current work that projects you're working on right now?
Right now, because I've been so sick for the last week, and before that, I'm just recovering from Achilles tendon surgery. So I was kind of stuck on a couch in a cast for 5 weeks, and now I'm in a boot. But there was a wedding we had to attend, my nephew's wedding. In fact, I think that's where we all got the virus last Saturday. I actually did a gift for his bride. She's a horsewoman. She's a Olympic level dressage rider and trainer of horses. And there was this lovely picture of a horse licking her face. So I actually did that with color pencils and alcohol markers and gave that as a gift. So that's what I worked on. And once I'm out of this boot, I have some ideas on some mixed media work that I want to do, but I still have to get to it.
Right. And even though you have this very demanding full-time job, you have a very rigorous creative schedule for not being a technically full-time artist. You're in exhibitions all over town, which takes another type of energy and focus. But I know your schedule.
The exhibitions have been all thanks to Marjorie, because last 2 years I have not applied for any of the shows, because not only are it's COVID time, attendance and all that, so I didn't bother to apply for any of them. And I just got into one right here in Dresden, and then I had to withdraw because of falling sick. Because that was.
And you were in Yellow Barn. There was an exhibition of your
work. Yeah, I was
work.
supposed to be, but I couldn't go and put up my stuff because I didn't want Lily, my friend, to get any infection from me. So.
But your work was up, right?
No, it wasn't. Couldn't get it there because I was so sick.
Oh, okay.
It was very bad. So.
Yeah, it was just for the 2 days. I know. I was gonna go.
Yeah. And it was also raining so badly. Poor Lily didn't have too many people because it was pouring.
Right.
Those days.
So I know we have some people on the call who are involved in arts, but maybe there's some people who are new doing art. What kind of advice do you have for a beginner?
I think that the courses, like, I wish I had taken some courses before. I just didn't realize how freeing they were. Like, I would really recommend Judy Wood to anybody. She has a free course, and then I signed up for the 6 modules, because it's just, she gets you stuck if you've never done it. I mean, for people like me who are figurative artists, getting out of that figurative mold is difficult. We kind of being not trying to be loser was difficult. But for people who are just starting out, it is such a fun exploratory process, because she says she just gets you free with different media, trying different things and just expressing yourself, and it's a lot of fun. And other things, I actually love the classes. I took one charcoal class in Glen Echo and the Yellow Barn, and it was fantastic. So,
well, and COVID, like as you mentioned, you took Judy's virtual class. COVID has brought us so much more virtual classes. It's actually easier to do artwork at home, I think. Then you don't have to schlep everything, or you can use your own stuff and just keep it set up as you left it.
Exactly.
You don't have to set up and clean up every time.
Exactly.
That's great. I have an encaustic project right in front of me that I'm trying to
Oh,
finish.
okay.
Because I'm submitting it for our virtual art exhibition this Friday, which is going to focus on food. And if I invite you too, Mihira, to, I can't recall if you have, well, you have people cooking, which,
Okay, those are the only food related ones I have.
right. So if I may, can I include them?
Sure, absolutely.
And I'll send them to Marcy. But others, if you'd like to include your work, you can, I put our newsletter in the chat, but you can send it to marcyplusart@gmail.com by tomorrow night. Well, good. Well,
I saw Marcy also.
oh yeah, Marjorie. I know Marcy. Yeah, everyone also loves and knows Marcy, like Mihira. Everyone loves Mihira too, and her work. So yeah, so Marcy is also one of your regular artists that you showcase. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's a teaching artist for us too.
Yeah,
So
she's great.
she does the tiny house workshop for a 3-day, 3-week long, once a week. But anyway, I want to, I don't want to take any more of your time since you've been under the weather, Mihira.
Thank you.
So thank you
thanks,
to everyone. And thank you, Mihira, for sharing your wonderful talent with us. And we